Amjad Saab is actually the founder of PILAP, which is an interesting part. So he, after coming back from America, he felt the need. ACLU ko dekhte the udhar, and he said, "How come we don't have any institutions which can, protect the fundamental rights of the citizen of Pakistan?" So he came up with this idea in 2010, and the rest of it is history. We are all part of the same journey, and he continues to remain committed. इनने एक जो सबसे बड़ी बात की है, where I use him as an example, is when you have a cause. For example, somebody say, I would like to fix pollution, or I would like to work on healthcare. He has taken his issue by the horn. He's financing it. He's pushing it. He's hired a lawyer. PILAP पे कोई नहीं आता. PILAP के shoulder से चल रहा है. बंदूक तो चल रही है, which is fine, because you don't want to be in the face of that. Amjad Saab current. It's PILAP that's doing it. So a lot of time we can actually be a proper conduit towards, like mining में हम कर रहे हैं. Nobody wants to put a face. Engro भी नहीं कुछ कह रहा, but some of the people are being part of the group, and it's the PILAP face. Because for example, जब nuclear plants हमने किया था, we were called by ISI came and saying कि आप लोग क्यों कर रहे हैं ये. अगर एक बंदा होता तो उसको तो पकड़ लेते वो, भी तुम क्यों कर रहे हो. But institution is much powerful one. So education की काफी लंबी history है. He has been after it for a long time. In fact, he will tell you his vision of it as well, where he wants to go to other provinces. So I'll pass it on to Dr. Amjad. Thank you for taking the time and bring us up to speed.
Thanks, Saad. So I think to start with, there are about 52 million children in Pakistan, and out of that, 23 million are not going to school at all. Wow. And out of the remaining children, about 18 or 20 million who are going to government schools. Even a fifth grader cannot write a sentence in Urdu, forget about English. And this is based on certain studies done by Acer and others, that in government schools, where there are about, I think, 18 million children, even a fifth grade child cannot write a sentence in Urdu. And, so SAT basically, IBS Sakkar, for example, used to conduct SAT exams for the fifth grade and the eighth grade students. And only 20-25% will basically pass, maths and English and Urdu and sciences, etc. So I think the Sindh government was quite embarrassed with that. So rather than trying to improve the quality of the students, they just stopped, IBS Sakkar from conducting SAT. So that was the easy way out. Only I think about 10-12 million children who are actually going to private schools, and that includes the low-cost private schools, where the fees 1,000 rupees per month hai. Even there, the education is better than government schools, where the fee is in excess of 3,000 rupees per month. So if you look at the budget of the Sindh government, the cost is 3,600 rupees per child per month, but the quality of education is worse than a private school, which is charging like 700 rupees per child per month. So हमारी जो education की गाड़ी है वो एक wheel पे चल रही है, because out of 50 million children, only about 10-12 million children are getting some decent level of education. और फिर इसी वजह से हमारा मुल्क भी एक ही wheel पे चल रहा, because it's directly linked to to education to start with. And again, if you look at some of the numbers, for example, Human Development Index, we are 118. And here, if you look at expected years of schooling, India में 12 years है, Bangladesh में 11 है, and Pakistan में 9 है. So out of something like 150 countries or so, if you look at the red line, countries ranked below Pakistan in expected years of schooling include Mauritania, Tanzania, Sudan, Mali, Chad, and Niger. So among like 149 countries, which is a sample size here, and these are countries which have a population of over 1 million and GDP over 10 billion. हमारा तो GDP है 3 billion है. So I took that as a sample size, and जो मुल्क हमारे से नीचे हैं in terms of number of schooling, expected years of schooling, that is Mauritania, Tanzania, Sudan, Mali, Chad, and Niger. So you can see where we stand. Or 143 out of 149. So future bhi acha nahi, because we are talking about expected years of schooling. Ek to present or past hai, but even the future does not look very good. Similarly, primary school enrollment hamari achhi, actually 95% pe hai. Bangladesh is 120%. Now one can say how did it go above 100%? Because even the adults are coming back to primary school. So that's why it's in excess of 100%. But or secondary school पे हम जाते हैं तो you can clearly see only 45% of children make it to the secondary school. Look at India and Bangladesh, where about 75% make it to the secondary school. And post-secondary, again, only 12% of children in Pakistan make post-secondary education, versus 23% in Bangladesh and 29% in India. And from when children go from primary to secondary, there's a major drop for two reasons. One thing is that we have very few secondary schools in Pakistan. There's shortage of secondary schools. The second thing is the cost, transportation costs increase. Obviously, if rickshaw karna padta hai to send the child to school, that they cannot afford. And the other thing is, especially for female students, parents do not want to send them, away from, far away from home. So that's the difference. So again, talking a bit about tertiary education, 1 in 3 youths in India are enrolled in universities or equivalent. In Bangladesh, 1 out of 4 are enrolled. In Pakistan, 1 out of 8 youth are enrolled in universities or equivalent, some type of degree college or whatever. So again, a very unfortunate situation. So, for the economy to grow, there are different factors: healthcare, population planning, education and training, science and technology, agriculture, industry. But again, we're talking here about education. And since, we are not spending on education and we are not getting enough children educated. तो you see, हम जब बात करते हैं इकोनॉमी ग्रो करना, तो वो क्या होता है कि people buying more of goods and services. How do you define, economic growth? It's increase the overall, production of goods and services in a country. अब अगर educated नहीं होंगे, for example, अगर एक चौकीदार है, उसका बेटा चौकीदार ही है या ड्राइवर बन जाता है, तो obviously उसकी जो income है, उसमें he cannot afford goods and services. तो आपकी इकोनॉमी ग्रो नहीं करती. अगर एक चौकीदार का बेटा डॉक्टर बन जाता है, तो उसकी सैलरी goes up, 1.5 lakh, 2 lakh रुपए to start with. So he can afford to maybe, buy a, car on lease, or maybe get a TV or a refrigerator or whatever. So जब लोगों की per capita income बढ़ती है, तो उनकी demand of goods and services बढ़ती है, उससे इकोनॉमी बढ़ती है. बट अगर आपने बच्चों को जाहिली रखना है, तो फिर उनकी पर कैपिटा इनकम ही नहीं बढ़ेगी, तो इसलिए डिमांड ऑफ गुड एंड सर्विसेज भी नहीं बढ़ती, तो इकोनॉमी भी ग्रो नहीं करती. So if you look at education spending as a percentage of GDP, so India has spent about 3% of GDP on education over the last 21 years. Bangladesh और पाकिस्तान ने about 2% किया है. But if you see, the green line is coming down, so Bangladesh 1.8 पे है और Pakistan now 1.5 पे चला गया. So as the debt servicing is increasing, तो उसमें बाकी तो चीजें कम नहीं हो रही, नॉन प्रोडक्टिव स्पेंडिंग तो कम नहीं हो रही, बट उन्होंने एजुकेशन को कम करना शुरू कर दिया. So if Pakistan had also invested about 3% of GDP on education as India did, we would have spent an extra $37 billion on education over the last 21 years. So if we had spent that type of money, तो उसका कुछ result भी नजर आ रहा होता. So in my view, education and population planning are two critical differences between us and India and Bangladesh. Again, if you look at population planning, हमारी population 2.7% per year पर grow कर रही है, और India और Bangladesh की about 1.8. So if you compound it over a 50-year period, the Pakistan population would have been 73 million less. हमारी population 22 करोड़ नहीं होती, 15 करोड़ होती, अगर हम उसी रेट पे ग्रो करते अपनी population जिस रेट पे Bangladesh and India has grown their population, which means there are 73 million less children to feed, to educate, to give jobs and so on. So there would have been probably more focus, a bit more focus per child on education and healthcare and so on. So one of the key reasons I think things have gone out of hand is that we have never tried to control the population. Again, it is linked to education, because studies have shown कि जहाँ पे mother educated होती है especially, तो वहाँ पे birth control बेहतर होता है. So in a nutshell, out of 52 million children, 23 million, 44% children are not going to school at all. 18 million children going to government schools are getting very poor quality of education. Half of the government schools lack electricity, drinking water, toilets, boundary wall, furniture. ठीक है, so 50% of Pakistani schools में बिजली ही नहीं है, साफ पानी नहीं है, toilets नहीं है, boundary walls नहीं है, furniture नहीं. 90% of children across Pakistan are underachieving in maths and science. This is based on an AKU study. Out of 149 countries, Pakistan is ranked 112th in primary school education and 119th in how much government spends on education. It is also interesting to see that although Bangladesh ने भी 2% of GDP education पे खर्च किया हमने भी, but the outcomes हैं Bangladesh में, for example, हम what I was showing you in the last slide, कि वहाँ 75% बच्चे तकरीबन secondary school जा रहे हैं, यहाँ पे only 45 जा रहे हैं. So with the same amount of spending, Bangladesh has actually used the money more effectively. In developing countries, investment in education is the single most critical factor in driving economic growth. So Boston Consulting Group ने 2012 में एक study की थी, which was actually a summary of hundreds of studies done on this education and economy link, and they found out that there is no factor which is more important in growing economy than education over a long term. The positive correlation between education quality, quantity, enrollment, and economic growth is well documented. This is another different study done by Kure in 2009. Another study in 2016 using World Bank data of 145 countries showed that for every dollar the government spends on education, a country's GDP grow on average by $20. An increase in education expenditure by 1% of GDP, increasing GDP growth by 0.9% with a lag of 10 years. So if you invest in education, with a lag of 10 years, your economy starts growing at an extra 1%. Another study done, I think this was done on Pakistan, for every 1 year increase in secondary education for the entire workforce, the GDP of Pakistan will increase by 13%, which is about $40 billion. So abhi average education Pakistan में 5 साल है, if you take the entire population. अगर आप उसको 6 साल पे ले जाते हैं तो आपकी GDP 13% से बढ़ जाती है, which is about $40 billion. Take it to 7 years, it will increase by another 13%. So unfortunately, this has not been a priority, and that's why our economy has not. This time pe Bangladesh and India, inki jo per capita income hai, it is double that of Pakistan. So that's a few slides, basically. Now coming to, so what we as PILAP have done, एक तो हमने आज से कोई 4-5 साल पहले एक सिंध हाई कोर्ट में केस ले गए थे, बिकॉज आर्टिकल 25A ऑफ द कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन से फ्री एंड कंपल्सरी एजुकेशन फॉर ऑल चिल्ड्रन 5 to 15 year old. ठीक है, तो ये हमारे कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन में लिखा हुआ है कि गवर्नमेंट की रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी है टू प्रोवाइड फ्री एंड कंपल्सरी एजुकेशन फॉर ऑल चिल्ड्रन.
I've lost your presentation. I can't see it anymore.
Yeah, I'm done with the presentation.
So इसे बंद कर दें तो it
okay,
will.
let me just
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
So, so basically, government. So constitution basically requires government to provide a free and compulsory education. तो हमने उसको base बना के we went to the Sindh High Court. Unfortunately, even in the High Court judges, I have not seen that type of enthusiasm about education. 5 साल हो गए. और होता ही है कि एक जज साल 2 साल सुनता है, but it's one hearing every 2 months or 3 months, and by the time he makes up his mind, he's promoted or he retires, और फिर एक नया बेंच बन जाता है. This is what we have been experiencing for 5 years. अभी भी जो एक जज है उसने, और ये फर्स्ट टाइम हुआ, थर्ड टाइम कि जज ने एक बेसिकली पिलाप और सेक्रेटरी एजुकेशन का एक sort of combination बना दिया कि you guys sit down and work out some type of a formula. So I've been engaged with I think 3 or 4 secretary educations over the last 4-5 years. I'm talking secretary education of Sindh government. It takes 6 months to develop some type of consensus, and then basically, the judge changes or the secretary changes. So secretary education has also changed at a rate of maybe about, once a year. So because of all that, we are nowhere as such. Abhi Sindh government ने एक नया 5-year plan किया. Last 5-year plan, which was 2014 to 18, they failed in all their outcomes. उन्होंने एक outcome दिए थे in 2014 में कि स्कूल एनरोलमेंट इतनी हो जाएगी, हम इतने स्कूल खोलेंगे, इतने बच्चों को पढ़ाएंगे, और वी हैव बीन इंसिस्टिंग द कोर्ट कि इनसे कहें कि जो इनका आउटकम है आफ्टर 5 years वो दिखाएं. अनफॉर्चुनेटली वो उन्होंने प्रेजेंट भी नहीं किया. And then they came out with a new 5-year plan. Again, it's a quite 200-page or a plan. I went through the plan. Again, एक तो इसमें ये है कि इसमें they have not even talked about net enrollment ratios. कि बच्चों के किस तरह every quarter या every year कैसे growth होगी. Last plan में था, but this time to avoid basically accountability, उन्होंने डाला ही नहीं कि नेट एनरोलमेंट क्या होगी. सो इट्स मोर ऑफ अ जजमेंटल थिंग देन क्वांटिफाइबल टारगेट्स. ठीक है. फिर उन्होंने ये किया कि जो सैट का एग्जाम होता था, एज आई सेड, जो सखर बोर्ड लेता था, वो भी खत्म कर दिया, और उन्होंने कहा कि वो इंटरनल एग्जाम लेंगे, विच इज मीनिंगलेस. फिर लॉट ऑफ टीचर्स ओवर द इयर्स हैव बीन हायर्ड. जो 3 लाख रुपए देता था उसको हायर कर लेते थे, रिश्वत लेके एज टीचर. सो वन ऑफ द थिंग्स वी हैव रिक्वेस्टेड द कोर्ट कि आप टीचर्स को भी टेस्ट करें, मे बी ऑन ग्रेड 5 के एग्जाम पे या ग्रेड 10 के एग्जाम पे, कि सबसे पहले टीचर्स क्वालिफाई करते हैं. और वन ऑफ द सेक्रेटरी एजुकेशन टोल्ड मी कि अगर ये 140,000 टीचर्स हैं प्राइमरी स्कूल एजुकेशन के, अगर इनको टेस्ट किया जाए तो इनमें से 20% भी जो है ना वो 10वीं जमात का एग्जाम नहीं पास कर सकते. बट ऑब्वियसली टेस्ट उनको कोई नहीं करता. So basically I think it is important. It is accountability of teachers, there is accountability of principal, there is accountability of secretary in the government. बट वो जो एक अकाउंटेबिलिटी का एक फीचर था जो सैट का एग्जाम था, जो ये शो करता था कि इस स्कूल में 30% बच्चों ने सैट का एग्जाम पास किया, और ये दूसरा स्कूल है गवर्नमेंट का जिसमें 10% बच्चों ने पास किया, वो उन्होंने एक सिंगल था वो भी खत्म कर दिया. अभी जो जज है उसका मेन फोकस है कि जी टीचर स्कूल आए. मेरा पॉइंट ये है कि जी स्कूल अगर आप इंश्योर कर भी लेंगे, उन्होंने अब कहा है कि जी वहां पे थंब इम्प्रेशन लगा दें, सो एटलीस्ट टीचर्स स्टार्ट कमिंग टू स्कूल. आई थिंक इट्स अ गुड स्टेप. But the question is not only of attendance of teachers, but also competency of teachers. If they come to school and they are not competent enough to teach, तो उसका भी कोई खास फायदा नहीं है. So there are a lot of these lingering sort of issues. Or as I said, the pace of things is slow. We are waiting for the next hearing on this, or we'll present our view whenever the next hearing comes. But अभी तक जज का ज्यादा फोकस अटेंडेंस पे ही है rather than other things like accountability and merit and so on. So unfortunately उतनी progress नहीं हुई. The next thing that we want to do now, which Saad was mentioning, that I have offered, and I'm going to work on, कि अब जो दूसरे provinces हैं, क्योंकि हम तो यहाँ 70 लाख बच्चा स्कूल नहीं जा रहा सिंध में, बट 1 करोड़ से ऊपर बच्चा स्कूल नहीं जा रहा पंजाब में. ठीक है, more than 10 million children are not going to school in Punjab. KPK has a similar situation, and worse is Sindh. Worse is Balochistan. So basically, the idea is to file similar cases in those high courts as well, because education now is a provincial subject. So if we first have to go to the high court, then we can try to go to the Supreme Court as well. So basically, hopefully in the next 3 months or so, we should be filing similar cases. I'm looking for good lawyers in the other 3 provinces. And then, some basic homework needs to be done before we can file cases in other provinces. वो कुछ मुझे खुद भी time नहीं मिल रहा है, and then I'll get some help from Amna as well to do the homework, and then get the lawyers and file cases in other jurisdictions. अब एक जो solution है हमारे ख्याल से, वो ये है और उसकी एग्जांपल है, फॉर एग्जांपल सिंध एजुकेशन फाउंडेशन, जहाँ 5 लाख बच्चे पढ़ रहे हैं अंडर अ पब्लिक प्राइवेट सिटीजनशिप, पब्लिक प्राइवेट पार्टनरशिप model, where government gives a scholarship of let's say 1,000 rupees per month, and the poor parent decides which school his child is going to go to. So the voucher है directly school को जाता है. Government just spends 1,000 because you see government does not even have the funding, whether it's a federal provincial government. सभी जो हालात हैं हम कहें कि जी बाकी बच्चे पढ़ाने के लिए thousands of schools खुल जाएंगे. Government does not have the budget. So the only possible solution is this voucher system. In Punjab, under Punjab Education Foundation, there are about 3 million children who are using this voucher system, and in Sindh there are about 500,000 children. So the government just provides a 1,000 rupee education voucher, and basically the parent then decides कि कौन से school में लेके जाना है, low cost private school obviously, and then कुछ इसमें accountability इस तरह आ जाती है कि if the parent is not happy with one low cost private school, he can always move the child to another low-cost private school, and the voucher moves with the child. So this has created some competition among private schools as well to offer good quality education to retain, these children who are studying there under this voucher system. And to me, this is sort of the best way to educate children because it's very cheap. I mean, अगर आप ले लें कि 10 million बच्चे भी स्कूल भेजने हैं, 10 million times 1,000 rupees per month times 12 months, that's not a very big amount, I think comes to 120 billion rupees. It's not a very big amount for the entire country. Federal government ka budget is like 10,000 billion, and this is a cost of 120 billion. So I think if there's a will, there is a way. But again, the provincial government's education departments, they think of this voucher system as their competition. तो अभी जो 5-year plan आया है सिंध गवर्नमेंट का, उसमें उन्होंने कोई फंडिंग बढ़ाई नहीं है. सिंध ये प्रपोज नहीं किया एटलीस्ट टू इंक्रीज फॉर द सिंध एजुकेशन फाउंडेशन because they think of it as a competition, because this is sort of more like a mafia now of teachers and principal, and they want to retain the resources and at the same time, fail to provide quality education. I'll stop here, I guess.
Thank you, Amjad sir. Very insightful. Just something I would like to add, because I did ask, ये जो voucher की बात हो रही है ना, this was something new to me about 5-6 years ago, and I think this is something that even Dr. Saab suggested in the court hearing as well. Because when education को अगर आप बढ़ाना चाहें, गवर्नमेंट को फिर स्कूल बनाने पड़ेंगे, ठीक है ना, and that's a huge investment, ठीक है ना, building, everything, and there are a lot of small schools, private भी हैं. आप by giving vouchers, you are actually moving people from bad public school to good, cheap schools. So I think this is something we should be also pushing the Sindh government to do, to increase the base of the Sindh Education Foundation. So this is a good, I think the first time it was tested was in Punjab by Kardar or somebody, if I remember it correctly. So any other questions that people have, please ask Dr. Saab.
I put up a question in the chat, Saad. I really want to know whether there's any school inspection and reporting function. Are there any inspectors that visit schools that then report on the performance of the schools, and do they take any retribution if the performance does not meet a standard?
RF, to my knowledge, there is none. As I said, this is more like a mafia. They do not like so and maybe there's some internal reporting that does not come. It's not publicly, because publicly, I mean, I've gone through quite a bit of literature on education, and I've not seen anything done by the government which are, along those lines. In case of these, public-private, when Shahid Kardar set it up in Punjab first, so there were these, government professors who used to go to schools, and they would test the children, and if for only, let's say, above 60-70% of the children will pass the exam, then that school qualifies for the vouchers system. But as far as the government, departments, if there is any such thing that is pure internal. So, I mean, ideally, every school should, basically whatever the, first of all, we need a standardized exam so we can compare schools across the board. Again, that standardized exam was SAT, which has now been finished. So even if there was some accountability or some type of transparency as to how one school is doing versus another, that is gone now. And now they're saying they're developing an internal mechanism, but I don't think this will even be reported, outside. They might have one within. But also remember one thing: it's very difficult to fire a government officer, including a government teacher, because anytime they fire anybody who's not coming to school or who's not teaching well, he goes and gets a stay from the court. And you cannot fire government employees, no matter they're working or not working. So that's another key issue. And then also these teachers, they are constituencies of the political parties, so they don't want to take them head on.
Question: do you think that there's a need to define different modalities for provision of this education through legislation? I mean, maybe the provinces could make their own set of rules based on Article 25A. So
they have, Amina. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead. Are you done with your question?
That was my question. Like,
it's a good question. Once, I mean, it was under the 18th Amendment that, after at that time that they came out with this Article 25A. And after that, to my knowledge, all provinces have developed their own rules, some are good, some are not, but even those rules are not followed, so that they are in the books, but they are not followed actually.
Okay. I mean, I think there is a need for all stakeholders to make this Article 25A have a positive impact. I think there is no other solution.
There is very little political, will, interest, on education. So it has to come from the top, and unfortunately, it's not. I think even in Punjab, Shehbaz Sharif, when he was the chief minister, he was trying to improve government schools, but I think at some stage he realized that's not possible, within the government. So he started handing over the management of a lot of government schools to like TCF and others, to improve the quality. So within this, framework of government where you cannot fire a teacher, no accountability, no link with the, salary or performance or whatever, I think it's very difficult to this system. I mean, a few decades ago, I mean, some of the very bright minds in Pakistan who went to the top actually came out of government schools. But I think gradually the standard has gone down drastically.
You see, the problem is this is bigger than life. This is not something PILAP can by itself drive. And I think we will need many organizations to get together and obviously push the government. It has to be done through regulation. I mean, हम TCF बना सकते हैं 1000 स्कूल का, but that's drop in the ocean. What we need is 1 lakh schools. ठीक है ना? So वो तो हो ही नहीं सकती. Government has to somehow public-private partnership से भी कर दे. वो कहे जी हम finance करेंगे. And I know, I think about 5-6 जब ये शुरू हुआ सिंध एजुकेशन, बहुत सारे स्कूल से सक्कर में वो पब्लिक स्कूलों को ने ऑक्शन किया था. आप में से कौन इसको रन करना चाहता है? वो बजट्स आए थे. lot of people, I know, Amin Ashwani and his group of friends and some other people took over certain schools and they are doing very well. But this needs to be done on a much wider scale. And I think we need to put pressure on our legislation, on our government as well, because you see, accountability, जो आरिफ साहब ने कही थी, in fact, our accountability is what drives things, ठीक है ना? But when there is no accountability, nobody is checking, nobody is questioning, तो बात ही नहीं पता चलती. So then you just need to make sure that you've got some merit-driven organization who know how to educate to take them over. I'm sure TCF को से आप कहेंगे मैं आपसे financial burden नहीं डाल रहा आपका, operational burden नहीं डाल रहा हूँ, आप 50 ले और ले लेंगे 50 स्कूल, because financially it becomes very difficult to run it and then raise funding for it as well. Government of about 1.9 or 3.9, I mean 1.9 and 2.9, I mean this is nothing, but we should be going to 5%, especially with the lack of education that's right now pulling us down. Skill development bhi nahi aata. If you're not educated, you can't even take them to the next level. They can't even read and write. So this is actually a very big issue, and it is. I applaud Amjad Saab. At least he's shaking the barrel in many ways, and he wants to do it in other provinces. I think we need to think of strategies and opportunities where we bring other people, especially in the government, on board as well, and they partner on this journey. Otherwise, so your mulk is, it's really sad when you look at the countries he has listed. Who are we rated against? Ghana and Bhutan, and God knows, Bhutan तो खैर हमसे बहुत बेहतर है. Mostly African, poor African countries. That's the countries we are being compared against. Even Afghanistan in certain cases is ahead of.
I think the second highest in out of school children. I think Pakistan boasts of being the second highest in being.
Is it a case of investing more money in it, or is it a case of getting more value out of the money we've already put in? Because even if you throw billions more and you're using the same teachers and you're getting the same teachers from the same patriarchal system, then you're just going to increase the bad performance. I mean, surely you want more value in terms of educational performance from the existing money you're putting in. And until you have retribution, until you have reward and punishments for good behavior and bad behavior, you will not be able to screen out the bad teachers.
There's a very famous saying which says, if you continue to do the same thing, you'll continue to get the same result. आप पैसे भी ज़्यादा लगा दें, फर्क नहीं पड़ेगा. You are 100% right. We have to raise the level of teachers and teacher education पे focus करें. Otherwise, the money will be wasted. It won't help.
And the only way, like you said, Saad, the only way you have, measuring of performance and behaviors is by having an independent inspection and evaluation system. Yeah,
absolutely.
And the results of that inspection are then, you can present that to a law court and say, look, here's the blockage. Here's what the independent inspectors with powers have recommended. Yeah. Now take the action. Until you get that sort of relationship, you're not going to have the powers to take any real action, because like Dr. Amjad said, they're going to go to the courts, they're going to get a stay order, and things aren't going to move.
Yeah. Who's going to bell the cat? I mean, I agree. Basically, these political governments, not all, but some governments, they take money to hire these teachers, or anybody, who can afford 300,000 or 500,000 without any exam, because a lot of people get graduation degrees and they don't know anything. We conduct our own entry test when we hire graduates. And this is sad of 10th class, that we test them on, although they're graduates. And about 50% of them fail. So basically, getting a graduation degree, whether it's through cheating or whatever means, here is not a big deal. So you are a graduate, you are hired as a teacher. Now, by the way, something good has happened, that even in Sindh, where, there was more corruption and so on, they are now using this national testing service to hire teachers. So what I hear from the government, the education department here, that the quality of teachers hired in the last few years is much better, because they have to go through this entry test system rather than just, having a certificate that they are a graduate and, and getting in by paying 500,000 or 300,000 rupees, So there is some improvement. But I think if we go by normal pace, it will take 3 decades for the system to clean up. But I think that's why there has to be accountability of teachers and principals. But within government, and no political government wants to take them head on for obvious reasons.
Dr. Amjad, you mentioned this test that Sakar used to do, which has been discontinued.
Yeah,
can we, I mean, that was one way of, creating some sort of a benchmark across schools, based on certain cut-off scores. So can we push that through the Sindh High Court as well in the case we are filing?
Yeah, absolutely. This is exactly what we are saying, that test was the only independent test that should be reinstated. And there should be a similar test done by IBA Karachi or Sakhar for teachers, because when I would have been having this session with the Secretary of Education, they said, oh, we have done training for 40,000 teachers. And I said, okay, how many of them failed the training? And he said, not even a single one of them failed the training. So out of 40,000 teachers who are trained, not even a single one fails the training. So that's sort of how the system is run.
But this screening mechanism that you've mentioned by IBA Sakhar. Now, it seems to me, obviously, the ultimate growth model that you want is you want employment. You want school leavers and university graduates to be employed, in jobs that are meaningful. Now, there are jobs that require workers. Okay? So if you think about the scalability of your education system, I mean, really, at the moment, even your unskilled worker or your semi-skilled worker doesn't have the motor skills either. Yeah. The other day I was here, I asked one of my domestic staff to use a pair of scissors to cut some cloth. Yeah. She didn't have the motor skills to use the scissors. Yeah. So, let's not always think about education in terms of fractions and divisions and mathematics. There are skills that are needed, and therefore we can quite easily train the teachers to deliver these skills. But these are skills that factory workers need, that farmers need, that tailors need, that waiters and waitresses in the catering services need. It's about hygiene. It's about motor skills. These are things that even when they go abroad, Dr. Waheed, even when they go abroad and they want to get jobs in the hospitality sector and they want to get jobs in the catering sector, they need these basic skills. So let's not, if we're going to say, let's talk about education performance, it's not always about maths. It's not always about writing sentences. It's also about these unskilled and semi-skills as well, vocational skills.
Agree. So that also is missing here, what they say, talim and tarbiyat. I mean, even basic, tarbiyat is also missing in it.
I mean, आपके सारे जो यहाँ से workers जाते हैं दुबई में और UAE में, वो तो unskilled or semi-skilled work है ना?
Right.
अगर उनको एक कोई साइन बोर्ड नहीं पढ़ने आता है, कोई सिंबल नहीं उनको आता है, यूनिवर्सल सिंबल्स होते हैं ये this is preventing, this is a blockage.
Agreed.
Any other comments or questions? No, thank you, Amjad Saab.
Thank you for
joining.
Very
important that we share the work that you have done, and this video will be online. So if you have other members, we'll try to ask them to just go through it as well. And hopefully will help us drive the future. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.